computer. And here we go. All right, so starting off with, I've got Andrew behind me just helping me out because he's done this a few times. I asked him to sit in because I've not done a Zoom webinar before. So he has kindly offered to help me out in the background. Also, I'm going to apologize in advance if you hear any of Noah in the background. So let me just go here, make sure that we've got everybody in. There's a few more people waiting to come in. So everybody should be in now. All right, so we're going to start with very basics of branding. So just going to get Andrew in here. He's going to help me with a few of the chat questions while I'm busy. All right, so here we go. Welcome to Well Branded. I'm going to start off talking about a little bit about myself because not everybody in here knows it. So I have been in PR and brand communications for quite a while. My background is brand communication and marketing. I'm South African, for those of you that don't know, by all my stories of all my favorite home treats. I started out in television and radio alongside PR a long time ago, which was great because it gave me a really good insight to how sort of the 360 world of marketing works. And it has allowed me to get quite a good overview, if you can, of how the PR world and all of that connects. So I'm a mum to a 2.5-year-old. For those of you joining in from around the world, I'm based in Dubai. Very grateful to be in Dubai. It puts us sort of in the center of the world, which gives me good access to a lot of places that we love traveling to. We are avid travelers. So one of the reasons I transitioned from agency, which I've owned for the last 8 years, to something like a digital solution is a number of reasons. So one, I think this gives me more ability to assist different types of people. One of the reasons I got into the field that I did is because of the people. So I really enjoy working with people. And working in this field allows me to do that. So I've transitioned from being a traditional PR agency owner, where you client service, you have X amount of clients that you go in and see weekly or daily, and now to an online. So from this platform, which is well branded, I hope to offer training, courses, one-on-one consulting, all specifically in the area of brand communication and PR. I have a wealth of experience that I've gained across industries, from crisis management to media to lifestyle to travel, and being in the space the online space has allowed me to do that. So very, very happy to be here. So I'm just going to wait. There's 1 or 2 people still jumping in that have asked us just to give them a second, and then we will hop straight on. Okay. Andrew's like, I got this. Okay, here we go. So let me just get on to this presentation. Righto, so this is me. I'm a mum to a 2.5-year-old, a wife to lovely Andrew, who's sitting in the background and helping me today. Essentially, well branded is me going, I've done a lot and I'm ready to take on the challenge of starting from scratch. So well branded is that, it's me starting from scratch. I've thrown in amateur cook because it was a kind of a joke as to how quarantine's kind of turned all of us into chefs and cooks. Fitness fan, brand fan, and travel obsessed. And I want to focus on brand fan just a little bit. I am particularly interested in how a brand ages, how it grows, how it's developed. And I think regardless of where you come from on today's call, there is something that someone can take away in any shape or form. So whether you are a personal stylist, whether you're a nutritionist, whether you have your own brand that you're growing into the influencer field, but similarly, if you have a corporate-based job, if you have a team that you manage, everything ties back to brand and PR in some way. So there'll be elements of this that you can take away and adapt. So some of the examples or some of the worksheets might be themed on a specific industry like lifestyle, just for the sake of understanding the relevancy, but you can easily adapt it to what you do. So all about branded, we're an online resource, and this is the direction we're going in. For anyone that is interested in a brand, that has some sort of affinity to a brand, we're going to be sharing the latest industry news. So if you want to know what's going on in the world of PR or branding, I particularly find that quite interesting. So I will read up on how brands have adapted to the current COVID-19 situation. And I find it really fascinating to see how in a matter of weeks, brands have taken on an all new strategy to try and speak to consumers, reach them in their, in their lounges, in their homes, adapt their language, adapt the sort of messaging they're sending out to be more passive, more softer, and more appropriate to the environment we're in. So branding as a whole is a very, very specific passion of mine. And I just wanted to put all of my knowledge and all of my resource in one place. When you're client servicing, you're going in and you're seeing clients maybe once or twice a week, you're working on the same strategy for the same brand. And it's great. It's really exciting. Similarly, if you're client side, you work on one brand, you put all your energy and excitement into it. And I've done that. I've done all of that and I've loved it. And I just felt now I want to be able to control my own time and control a few other elements in my life. And I also want to be able to work with people like so many of you that have reached out after I put this out and say, how can we help your brand? For me, the joy is working from one day on, say, a cookery concept and the next day on a full clothing range. So it's all different. It's all exciting. The important thing for me is people. So at any point, please reach out. Questions are being handled by Andrew, but I'll reply to all of them after. A third element of the well-branded platform is a membership facility. Now, this won't be up for a little while, but essentially it's going to be a community of people that have businesses. And again, it's whether you're in corporate, whether you have a team, whether you have your own business, whether you are the brand, and put a whole bunch of knowledge, resources, the ability to connect and network, share skills, work with affiliates. I have amazing friends doing amazing things. And I have people that aren't my friends doing amazing things that I've worked with. And I think being able to connect everybody in a world where collaboration, as abused as that term may be, healthy collaboration can be really effective for a lot of people. So the membership arm of Well Branded will be just that. It will give you access to a community of people, resources, knowledge sharing, group coaching sessions. There'll be lots of information that's shared from other people. And then I'll rope in specialists on branding or, your logo design or graphic design support or business coaching. One of my really good friends is a communications professional, and she helps people do their public speaking. So there's a lot of resources that all links in to how you are branded or how you brand your company or how you PR the company you've branded. And it's just going to put all of that in one place. So welcome to Well Branded. So the starting point for today is very simply, you need to understand whether you have a personal brand, whether you manage a brand on behalf of a corporate or a company, or whether your business is your brand. What do you have available for the market? Is it you? Is it your product? Is it your service? And it sounds like a really simple question, but I find a lot of people that you speak to, no matter how big or small their business is, find that area a bit gray. So if you are confused as to whether you want to be the front face of your brand, whether you don't want to be, but you want to push it based on your network, all of those questions is what you need to spill onto a piece of paper. And I say piece of paper, despite us being in a digital age, because I feel when you write and you visualize, it helps you sort through your ideas a lot easier. So consider all the things that you have to offer and then start packaging them. So put them into little blocks. So this is my brand. This is me. This is how I want my brand to come across. This is the people that I want to come across to. Now consider all the points that your customers then come into contact with, and then look at where the overlapping is. Because there's two things, right? You as a brand owner see your brand a specific way. Your customers, your audience, your target market, the consumer market, don't always receive that message 100% as you would intend it to be put out. And connecting those two is what we need to do. So when you've understood what you have available to offer, whether that's your product or service, separate to that, consider what your customers are receiving. So all the contact points that your customers have with your brand. Some may be digital, some may be in store, some may be at a hotel front desk, some may be via your social media feed. What is it that your customer comes into contact with before they acquire your service, yourself, or your product? Now that you've got those two buckets, you need to then work out the connection, and that's the experience. So if it's online shopping, if it's walking into a hotel and booking a room, or if it's a combination of multiple channels that they are using. A second layer to experience are things like policies, returns. And again, this is part of the greater brand experience, because there is no point in you beautifully packaging a product, spending a fortune on your Instagram, a fortune on your marketing, a fortune on your advertising, but there's a disconnect between the experience if someone wants to acquire it, or a disconnect between the experience of the messaging between what you're putting out and what the customer is receiving. As that layer extends, you consider things like your policies, your returns, which are the fluff to your customer experience, but equally as important, particularly in a time like this. We have a lot less patience with delivery. We're getting frustrated with bad service. And suddenly all those senses that are normally spread out between a retail experience, a drive to the store, an in-store experience, are now all being packaged in a high pressure container into a purely digital experience. So if you have managed to successfully merge your business or maintain your business in a digital space in a time like this, that's fantastic. But the pressure is now on to make sure that that space is perfectly run. And lastly, and we will come back to all of these points, what sets you apart as a business owner, as a business, as a product, as an experience? So all of the points above, you need to work out what sets you apart, because we live in a world where there's so much competition. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. But you need to own your identity. Authenticity is also another word that's being flung around quite freely these days. But in its truest sense, it is the most important and the most defining factor between success and failure. Because if you don't know who you are, and that who doesn't necessarily mean you as a person. If you don't know who your brand is, if you don't know who your product is, if you don't know who you as a business owner is, it's impossible for you to differentiate how you're going to communicate yourself uniquely. So do you believe in so you need to believe in your proposition. So whatever your proposition is, which is the next step, you need to make sure that you are sold on it. Because if you don't believe that your product is superior, and I've sat with businesses that have said, okay, so we do this, great. What makes you different? Well, we're just like the guy down the road, but we can make ourselves a little bit cheaper if that's what's going to sell our product. You need to own, and it sounds like self-help book junk, but you need to believe in what you're selling, because in everything you communicate from that point on, that level of belief along with authenticity is what's going to make your consumer be attached to you and your brand experience over somebody else's. And that comes across in various ways. So it could be from the point of production, that you believe the production process, how you acquire your goods, your materials, how you cook, if that's your area, how you do makeup, if that's your area. You have to believe that your skill is superior if you're skill-based, that your product is superior if you're product-based, that your experience is superior if you're in hospitality or leisure. If you don't believe in your own proposition that you're putting out, I promise you no one else will. So for me, I started a lot of little businesses in the last couple of years. I mean, if my parents told you how many tie-dye, homemade card businesses, stamp businesses from the age of 15 I wanted to start, that all fell flat. Yes, I was young, and yes, it was exciting at the time, but I also didn't believe that it was the thing that was going to carry me through the rest of my life. I've stuck with branding and PR because of my belief in the industry growth, in the industry progression, and the fact that everything we come into contact with, from our gardeners to our pencils to our laptop brands and the brands we choose for coffee, evolves around or revolves around branding. And I find the world really, really fascinating. So to get back to my issue of proposition, you need to be 100% sold in your proposition. And you need to understand that from a consumer perspective, your story, which we'll come to later on, is what is going to sell them. So every step of your story, and this, it doesn't matter whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're an individual influencer, if we're going to use that word today, if you work within a corporate team, your belief in the brand that you expect another person to adopt is what's going to be the difference between adoption and failure. And that goes another level deeper when we start talking about production and heritage. Now, heritage is also another word that is flung around quite easily. You know, you'll sit in a briefing, particularly when you come to things like websites and talking about how a website's developed and what story. I will always sit in front of a new client and say, tell me your story. And I don't mean how did you land up in Dubai, or, you know, how many kids do you have, and, you know, what size is your villa. I want to know what about your story makes you marketable. And that's what everyone is asking. I had there's a podcast which is launching with Well Branded in the next week. And I had an interview with a publisher to talk to him about, you know, the world of publishing. And there's a lot of people that wanting to go into launching their own books and that kind of thing. And I think on the tail end of COVID-19, there'll be a lot of pseudo authors that come out of it, which is fantastic. But I think, like a lot of things, it sounds great in theory, but people need to understand the pieces that get involved. And he said, for every brand that he picks up to print a book for, there has to be a story. So when you're creating your brand foundation, one of the key elements that you need to build it on is heritage, authenticity, and a story. Now, I don't mean make a story that's not there. It's find a story within your product which relates back to what sets you apart and what makes you different, because there is where your story is going to start. Okay, let me just figure out what is going on here. All right. Now, knowing your audience. It sounds like a really simple thing, but there's a difference between who you want your audience to be and who your audience actually is. Knowing who you're talking to on the other end of your social media pages, on the other end of your ad campaigns, and it goes for big and small brands equally. And similarly, if you're a personal brand, if you're an influencer, ROI, or the return on your investment, which is what you're putting into building your brand, is based on who you're talking to and what they benefit from it. So social media has a lot of positives and a lot of negatives. And one of the negatives is it builds false audiences. So we look at the numbers, like the likes, their interactions, those kinds of things, but we're not understanding the relevancy that that audience has to making a purchase decision. And a purchase decision doesn't necessarily mean they have to buy something. So you don't have to necessarily sell something, but they need to adopt the messaging. They need to react to what you are putting out for them to equate to an audience. Someone that scrolls down an Instagram feed and likes every photo is not an audience. They're an observer. They're a passive observer. If anything, you know, they're there just for the semantics. The audience is the people that are going to impact your business. The people that when you put out a new offer or a special or a room rate or a menu or free classes or opportunities are going to, if not click and purchase, at least click and spend time looking at it. So you need to take the time to understand who that audience is, understand their behavior. So understanding their behavior is a multi-layered thing. And the reason why I thought this is something important to put in here, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on it, is because I want you, during the time you have at home, to really analyze who your audience is. Go back and look at your sales history. Go back and look at who your last 7 nutrition sales were made to. Go back and look at who you've engaged in emails and DMs that have had consistent questions about what you offer, how you offer it. Go back and look at where your sales channels are failing you, in the sense that where your customers getting to and then dropping off. Analyze your own data, and you don't need an agency to do that, because you know your product best. So you can look at things like your social media feeds. You can look at things like your email boxes on your website. Surely that all, you filter that into one place. Go back and take the last 3 months, or if you want to start from before we had our staying at home, look at a sort of truer reflection of, in an ordinary situation, how does your audience respond to what you put out? Is there a click-through rate that doesn't convert to sales? Is there a lot of comments? Are all your comments on your social media emojis? Well, then you're not talking to the right people. Go back and analyze and audit, is the word I want to use. Audit all your customer contact points to understand where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are and where your opportunities are to convert a potential consumer into a consumer, and convert a consumer into a repeat consumer. So using this time at home, audit is going to be the umbrella word. You might hear my son screaming in the background. Audit is going to be the umbrella word, because you need to basically unpack all the layers of everything your brand has done so far and assess it. If you're starting from scratch, you have a clean slate, which is fantastic, but you don't have data. So what you need to do then is you need to understand who you're wanting to talk to. Where are they? Where are they hiding out? Where are they what is their behavior? What pages are they liking on Instagram? Be your own Google SEO, be your own Google search. Go and understand if X, Y, and Z person is your typical target audience. What do they do? What are their interests? Where do they spend their time? And make sure your messaging appears in those areas, whether it's social media, whether it's the mums groups, whether it's conversations at school, and then reassess things like gifting of rooms if you're a hotel, gifting of product if you have a brand. If you're new, where do you want to be gifting your product? Which profiles on Instagram do you look at and go, her audience is my audience? And I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this, but come back to influencer marketing as a whole separate thing. When you're analyzing your audience, whether that's a new one or an existing one, keep in mind the wood from the trees, if we can call it that. Remember to separate when people have a huge following, it's fantastic. Does that following relate to sales for the brands or the parties that they're involved with? That is a separate question. So when you are spending, and particularly if you're a small brand, and I know the same is true for big ones, because I've had the conversations with hotel brands about gifting a room or, spending money on a meal, you need to analyze what's in it for you. And it sounds like a selfish question, but as a business, particularly in a time like this, it's a good time to sit back and go, what have I benefited from partnership A or partnership B? And it may be a case of, I didn't get any sales back, but I got great awareness and my Instagram grew by X amount. And if that was one of your objectives at the time, then fantastic, you've achieved them. But always assess, as nice as it is, and we used to say this in PR when magazines were a big thing, always assess whether the money you're putting into seeing yourself in a magazine, the money you're putting into having your friends tell you, oh, I saw so-and-so tagged your brand, does that relate to the bottom line? And the bottom line for you in April 2020 may be growing your Instagram feed. Then great, you're achieving it. That bottom line may be we desperately need to turn around sales and move stock that we have. Then if that's that Instagram or that influencer or that gifting converted to that, fantastic, you're achieving that. If not, stop, audit, analyze, review, and decide whether that's a channel you need to be pursuing. Or maybe the channel's fine, but the medium or the person wasn't. Also remember, like I said earlier, remember to separate awareness and objectives related to brand awareness, whether you're a new, old, existing, refreshing brand, and objectives related to sales. And if you're to ask me in a time like this, we may be needing to pull back on awareness a little bit and focus a lot more on sales, because that is what we all need right now. Reviewing your channels is the next level of your audit. So this is the best thing to do, whether you have a new brand. As weird as it may sound, you can review channels as a new brand, and you need to review existing channels as an older brand. I said it earlier, review all your contact points. So whether a customer sees you on Instagram, whether they see you in a shop, whether they see you in a mum's group, where are customers coming into contact with you? What is the word of mouth on the street? Old school PR. What is the media saying about you? If you're a bigger brand, go back and review all your contact points and see whether they have converted. So a lot of the things in that slide relate to what I've discussed already. Look at where people are seeing you. Look at whether that's generating sales and leads, and what has the conversion been. Crossing your fingers and hoping that things convert or having nice to have associations is great in a time where your business is flourishing or you've got a little bit of an extra margin to play with. When you need to be trimming the fat, you need to be quite ruthless about where you're spending your money, because there's a lot of noise in the market at the moment, in the digital market at the moment. There's a lot of congestion in the social media space specifically, more specifically Instagram. So you need to make sure that nothing is being lost if it's costing you money. Email marketing is one of the key channels that I'd like you to focus on, if you want to call it homework from today. And it's something that we overlook because social media is like the beautiful, flamboyant, nicely boobed lady that steps into the room, and email marketing is maybe the less attractive looking individual. Email marketing is an asset. So having a database of emails of people that have opted in, that have stuck their hands up and said, I like what you do, whether you're a big brand, a small brand, it can be, you know, I love your recipes, I love how you cook, I love the healthy advice you give. I like what you do and I want to receive more of it. That is golden. That is something that needs to be nurtured and needs to be looked after. And it's the easiest way to make sure you have a captive audience that you control 100%. So spend time now when you have a little bit of breathing room, perhaps, to build that email database. How do you do this? There's a number of ways. There's incentives. There's making sure that when you put an ad or a campaign or a photo on Instagram, that there's a call to action. It is the easiest call to action because you're not asking people to put money in their pockets. You're not asking them to tag. You're not asking them to share. You're just asking them to click a button if you like what you see and opt in for more. The flip side of it is gaining emails that are not willing to have your information may sound great. You know, there was a time in PR where we do events and we could share databases before all the intellectual rules came in, and it was great. But out of a contact list of 5,000 emails that opted into Joe Soap's brand, they didn't opt in to get my information. So I'd spend time, or I'd have a team spending time putting these emails in and sending them emails out. It's wasted resources. So make sure when you are doing a partnership, or if you are doing an Instagram post, or if you're launching a new business, the first thing you need to have as a call of action before you ask people to buy or sell or stay or book or sign up is opt in for free information. Now, your responsibility on the receiving end of this email address is to provide value, is to not inundate. I signed up for an online travel thing a couple days ago, and it was interesting, and yet it was a very hard sell, very promo, which automatically puts me off. And one of my biggest issues with signing up for emails is being inundated with emails on the back end. So twice a day, every day for the last week until I unsubscribed, I received emails from this pair. It was a partner, husband and wife team that were doing these travel focus. And it was so aggressive, and it was in my inbox. And as it is, our inboxes are probably a little quieter than normal. So you do recognize if something's in there twice a day, all day. So immediately it was an unsubscribe. So your responsibility on the receiving end of a database is to manage it really well. You don't share it, well, that's illegal. And if you are going to do partnerships, you make sure you treat that like your family. You protect them. So you would say, hey guys, we've got this coming up. We'd love to share your email address. Sign up on this link if you're happy for us to do that. And I know a big part of that you have to do now, but it also lets people feel protected by being within your brand circle. So use the downtime you have now to create ways to build that email database. An easy thing to do is put a post up and offer something of value in exchange for an email address. It's a give and a take. And like you as a brand need to ask yourself, what's in it for me? So does a consumer. So if you're wanting an email address, offer something in return. I will give you 10 tips on how to do this, or sign up today and 10 of your friends get access to XYZ. Or if you're food related, I will send you menus for your kids. Offer something in return and understand that people will share as long as you manage that well. Another side of the value add, which is very relevant to where we're at now, is being compassionate, being empathetic to your audience. Everyone is in a difficult space. And as much as you as a brand or an individual want to upsell or sign up or offer free everything, because everything's currently free, you need to keep in mind that they're receiving this noise from a lot of different angles at the moment. So be sure to be quite clear and quite transparent, which ties back to what I said earlier about authenticity. Be quite transparent about what you're asking and what you're receiving. The beauty, which I think is a double-edged sword, of social media and how it's evolved the space of branding and PR, is that audiences are really smart. So to give you an example, a food brand in South Africa, very popular, very well loved food brand, put out an Easter recipe 2 weeks ago. Fantastic, like full of chocolate and donuts and da 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 da. Obviously trying to upsell a lot of the different products they had in store. The receiving end of it from a consumer perspective, which may have in their heads, they have intended it to be, wow, what a, like indulgent, amazing, chocolatey, sweet dessert. They got absolutely hammered. This is so unhealthy. Do you need 7 layers of caramel? Could you not have just given us a simpler, more enjoyable? We don't have money to spend on this many luxury items. Okay, the market dynamic is slightly different, but the example still stands. Don't try and sandwich things for your audiences. Rather be simple, clear, and transparent, and focus on the next step of what you want as a separate element, rather than trying to cram a lot of things in and sandwiching it in a way that you want followers on Instagram, plus email, plus this, plus that. Oh, and plus we want to sell you something. Treat your audience as smart people like you are, because they are. Because even if within their personal capacity, they might not know what you're doing, someone else will comment and link, and things spread like wildfire. So be transparent, be clear, be honest, and be supportive more than anything in a time like this. And wherever you can, particularly now, add value, because you're building relationships. One of the most important things as a brand, whether you're old, new, young, big, small, you need to develop an emotional connection. So all of us connect with things for various reasons. I connect with certain brands that relate to me as a mom, that relate to my travel, that show concern for me as maybe a small business owner, someone that's trying to work their way up. Everyone responds emotively through different levels that a brand puts out. So when you market your brand, and if you take nothing away from today, this is one of 2 things I want you to take. Market your brand to your consumer on a 5 sense basis. Connect with their senses and connect with their emotions. So be authentic in how you reach out, be authentic in what you put out, and connect to them on various levels. Because as humans in the current time, where there's so much information online and so much that you can access just purely from your phone in your hand, people can separate the wood from the trees. And if you want to stand out, being authentic, being emotive, and that's where it goes back to, in a time like this, give value, give things for free. Obviously don't put yourself out, but if you can offer an opportunity for someone to improve their life, like a lot of people are currently with free courses, free webinars, free support, offer something of value to people. Genuinely try to help, or don't at all. But don't be in that gray space of, I'm giving you this for 10% off if you buy that. So just be quite clear about how you communicate to people. Consider what interests the person on the other end. Consider what annoys them, like the multiple emails that totally wound me up the wrong way. And consider on how you can take care of your database to convert them, to upsell them, to drive them, but also to let that come from them. Client relations, typo, clearly she didn't check her presentation. Client relations is a very important part of what we're doing. And to find the balance between managing your clients and managing your business. And I put that in there specifically because of the time we're in now. It's hard when you're losing clients, people are not paying you, we're all losing jobs, we all just want to upsell and sell and sell and sell. We've got stock building up. But it's also important to understand that there's a relationship behind it, and that empathetic approach that I spoke about earlier needs to play a part. Reach out to a big client. If you're an agency or in client servicing, reach out to them and say, hey, I know things are tough. Just letting you know, we've got old content that you can repurpose, or we've shot food for you from breakfast in 2018. If you're running short of content, could we send that over to you in a WeTransfer? Similarly, if you're a nutritionist, reach out to your clients and say, hey, how are you guys doing? Just checking. I know it's hard to cook at home every day. If you're running short on ideas, just drop me a message. Give a little to maintain that relationship. And lastly, which is an area that we can spend days and days and days talking about, but something that I'm going to touch on briefly today, and then next week build on a bit more, is your social media. Now, it is important for us to spend a lot of time in that space because there are a lot of people in it all day. It's where most of us are spending our time. But a friend of mine who is on today, Anna Roberts, I did a podcast interview with her, and she, along with a lot of other people that I've interviewed on similar levels, said to me, it's important to communicate to people to set their boundaries. And you as a brand need to do the same. You need to understand that you can't inundate, you can't oversell, you can't push people in a direction they're not going. And you need to use this time to completely refine your social media strategy. If nothing else, in the period we're in now, like I said about auditing, like I said about reviewing your audiences, like I said about dismantling everything you've done, putting all the pieces down on a piece of paper or on your laptop screen and working out which ones connected for you the most, you need to do the same thing with social media. Planning content is something that is a big part of what I wanted to say today, because we have the time in theory. You know, I've understand that there's a lot of articles putting a lot of pressure on us to be using this time to learn a new skill and clean your house and cook a gourmet meal every night. And let's be honest, none of us are doing it. I'm definitely not doing it. That's why it's taken me 4 weeks to get my first webinar up. But what you do need to do is spend 15 minutes before bed with a calendar on your phone, on your laptop, plugging in ideas to make your life easier. Now, organization is definitely not my strong point. However, what I have learned from being in client servicing and being in the driving seat of an agency where I often didn't have enough bodies for all the ideas and all the things that I wanted to bring to life. But what I did realize is organization is the only thing that was going to help me. So spend time sorting out your Dropbox, putting your content into folders, whether you're a big brand, whether you are a nutritionist, a makeup artist, a influencer, a coach, whatever your job is, whether you're starting a food business, whether you have a home clothing range, I challenge you to throw me an industry that wouldn't apply for you to be able to spend 15 minutes planning your content. Now, I'm going to be sending out, one of the 3 things I'm sending out today is a social media calendar. And it obviously doesn't mean that you copy and paste what I'm sending you, but what it does do is it gives you an example in a very simple layout of lifestyle of how you can vary your content. Because one of the biggest challenges I've found with clients, big and small, is finding what to post, finding what time to post, finding images, finding that time in the day to allocate, to think, then find, then caption, then post. If you can start with even 3 days at a time, put a little notepad on your phone. I type all my Instagram posts in notes because it allows me to space it out nicely, and then I copy it and I paste it to my captions. It also means that even if it's not my posting time, I can sit and think about it a little bit more than I would if I was like, oh, I need to get that post up, and just plan it a little bit better. So the Instagram calendar that I'm sending you is 42 ideas of what you could be posting on Instagram. And it, for example, if you're not in the lifestyle sphere and where there is a flat lay, you can replace that with a food dish, or you can replace that with your desk. Take the idea or the concept behind the different posts and apply them to your industry. And again, like I've said from the start, if you stuck, if you hit a hurdle, you hit an obstacle, jump on the Be Well branded Instagram, drop me a DM, and I will reply to it. I might not reply to it immediately, try not to send it 2 a.m. Dubai time, but I will reply to it because I want you to work through these sheets so that it is not just a, yeah, cool, nice to have, thanks for sending it, Zah, but I want it to be functional to make your life a little bit easier. I know how difficult, whether you have a team of 10 in a corporate office, a small business where you're trying to get it up and running yourself, or a small team where you've got a business running, but you're so busy with the logistics and the finances, and which it is tough. It is tough to get everything organized, and often social media and posting gets pushed by the wayside. It is your primary channel for people to receive your messaging at the moment. So if you paid 500,000 dirhams or 20,000 US dollars or whatever big figure you want to attach to a massive billboard on Sheikh Zayed Road or the major highway in your city, would you leave that to 5 seconds before the artwork goes up to decide what goes up? Probably not. So similarly, if your primary channels are social media, spend time thinking about it, because the time you post, the content you post, and the things you say in your post is the most important thing of what you're putting out, because that's all people are going to see. They're not going to see that and go, oh, I'm sure she was rushed with this picture, but the product's probably really cool anyway. That doesn't happen. So spend time on that calendar, take an Excel sheet, take your phone, slot in things, and you might have gaps for a while until you figure out what it is, but slot in things that suit your brand and your purpose to plan your social media. Then stage 2 of maybe the captions is allocating photos, and go back and repurpose. Content is not a one-time only show. You can repurpose content from 5 years ago. You might edit it differently. You might put a new filter on. Also remember, the technology we had 5 years ago was completely different. So you can just swipe left or right and get a completely fresh look on it. Review your audience activity, review what time, and you can do that from your handset. You can do that when the little one's gone to bed, or when you finally get to lie in bed with a mask on your feet. Review what time your audiences are on, review what times are best for you to post, and align that with the calendar. That way you're going to get up in the morning, you're going to go, cool, I know I'm using that photo, I'm using this caption, and off you go. All your tags are done. You don't have to sit and think about, oh, I forgot, I should have tagged the brand because then maybe I'll get some visibility. All of it's there, all of it's ready, all of it's ready to go. I personally, and this is a completely personal opinion, am less in favor of very structured themes, like very strict pastels, or, you know, very rigid boxing of images. If that's your thing and that's your aesthetic, go for it. If your audience is responding well to it and that's been your style for the last couple of years, absolutely go for it. For me, I like variety. I like saturation. I like colors. I like to have a little bit of my sun in today. And I'm talking about personally, my sun in today, my work tomorrow, my travel the next day. Work with your style. And going back to what I said about reviewing and auditing, when you look at which post got the most engagement, which post got the best response, which post got the most activity, which post converted to your website or your link or wherever you're sending your audience, because remember, social media is a holding room. It's a waiting room. It's a waiting room for you to funnel audiences and consumers into other spaces. That space might just be to know that you're there and know that that's your brand and look at your profile. That space may be the book now button. That space may be your website. Remember that social media is just there to hold people. It's not a sales tool. You can sell off of it via your website, but it's just there to hold people. So when you realize the purpose that social media has in the role of your business, whether that's a personal or corporate brand, you'll understand the importance of having your other channels equally as strong. So when you're creating your content, repurpose that content on your website, on your blog, everywhere that you can, make that content work. For me, the focus of your content shouldn't be as much about what color wash you're putting on it, and should be more about the quality. If you're in yoga, if you're in exercise, if you're in anything fitness related, what quality of content can I see what you're doing in that post? Can I take away something from what you're telling me? Is there a product that you genuinely are endorsing that I should know about to be like you as an influencer? You know, focus on things like your hashtag. Spend time thinking about it. The second bit of information I'm sending you with your 42 Instagram ideas or social media ideas is a hashtag guide. Because a lot of us throw in a hashtag willy-nilly, but do we know what it actually does? Do we know that on Twitter having more than 10 actually decreases our visibility? Do we know that we don't need them on Facebook? Do we know that having more than 11 on Instagram actually boosts our engagement? But that's one part of it. Having the right hashtags is the second part of it. So there's multiple layers to Instagram other than posting a pretty picture, and it all needs to fit together, which we will do in a separate social media section. But today's homework is processing the layers of who am I as a brand? Am I being authentic? Am I communicating? Do I know who I'm talking to? Do I know what my audiences are responding to? Do I know where I'm spending my money? And is it actually working for me? And then second of that, like the second part of that then is, with all of that in place, am I utilizing that to build my email database, which is a huge asset? Am I using that to communicate to clients, whether they stay or not post COVID-19? That's a separate conversation. But am I nurturing relationships with clients, with brands, with partners, with individuals in the industry who I can collaborate with? One of the biggest things I'd say to you is don't call on people just when you need something, because like audiences see through messaging, people that you want to collaborate with, people that you want to work with, everybody sees through it. So use this time to go back to being your authentic self. Go back to discovering who that authentic self is. And self is a word I'm using loosely, which relates to brands. Who is your brand? Who are you talking to? And are people responding to you the way they should? So from today, and I don't want to run over time because I think there's a lot of information being thrown at you. From today, go through and analyze all those things. The third bit of homework, worksheet that I'm sending you is a brand checklist. So I want you to go through all the points of the checklist. I think there's 8 or 9 of them. Go through the points of the checklist and ask yourself, is my brand defined? Do I know my audiences? What is my messaging? What is the tone of my voice? Am I understanding what my messaging and tone of voice needs to be? And again, these are all breakaway points, which we're going to spend an entire webinar on, but I wanted to give you the basics in a capsule for you to start thinking about. So when we do talk about tone of voice and brand personality, you know what you're talking about, and you know, and you've thought about what your brand personality is. Give your brand a human form, even if it's not you. Is your brand friendly? Is it not? Is it party related? Is it serious? Is it medical? Is it a hotel? Is it social? So take away those points, reach out to me on Instagram. Let me know if you're struggling with any of it. And let's go through those 3 worksheets and we'll meet back here next week. So to end, at Be Well Branded is the Instagram handle. Use it, jump on board, ask questions. Everyone that signed up will have sent me their email address. I'm going to send you a reply to the questions that would have come through. I'm not going to go through it now because I don't want to keep people longer than I promised, but I will answer it in an FAQ format in a newsletter that I'll send out to you. And I will be sending you these 3 worksheets. So for me, thank you for joining my first webinar. Thank you, Andrew, for managing the back end for me. And I hope that you guys have learned something. If you haven't, jump on and tell me that too. Let me know how we can evolve together to learn maybe something more specific. If there's specific areas you want to focus on in upcoming webinars, let me know that as well, because if I get enough interest in one topic, we can do a separate breakaway. If not, I'll pick up the call and we can have a Zoom directly and we can talk about it and you can tell me what your issues are. Let's make this time work for us. So stay home, stay safe, stay positive. They sound like cliched phrases now, but I do genuinely mean them. And thank you very, very much for joining the webinar today. And I hope you learned something. Jump on Instagram and I'll see you next week.